Welcome everyone to another early Wednesday morning. Let me turn that a little bit down. If people fall asleep because they see this picture for the 500th time, that's perfectly fine. What I'm going to do now is, usually I write down last week or last weeks. And now we step back a little bit and consider what we've done the last 1.5 semesters or so. As you know, this 2-semester sequence deals with these 3 big aspects of modern cryptography. That means symmetric algorithms. What we did here, among other things, we did DES and 3DES, and we did AES, lots of other stuff, modes of operation, stream ciphers, brute force attack, blah, 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 blah. So that was roughly the first third of this 2-semester sequence. What you don't know, what we finished last Wednesday, is we finished asymmetric cryptography. So we're done, within this introductory course with the topic of asymmetric algorithms per se. What we did, we introduced all 3 families of public key algorithms that are relevant in practice. That means RSA, discrete logarithm, and last 2 weeks we did ECC. Okay, so we're done with that. Here's the timeline, right? Again, this is, October. You don't have to copy that. You can copy, but it won't be on the exam, don't worry. Okay, so and yesterday I looked at the lectures and the syllabus and the layout of the course, and it turned out it is in fact almost 1/3, almost exactly. So this was roughly 1/3 here. 1/3 of 2 semesters is 9 weeks here. Okay, that was, I think, exactly 9 weeks here. Exactly 9 weeks here. And this is today, okay, so this is May 11th, 2011. Okay, so we're here. We're done with this. We're coming from here. So what's left? We have about 9 weeks left or so, and we start today with this new area of protocols. It's usually not strictly protocols. It's a little bit like a protocol aspect in there. What's the main difference is from these 2 areas compared to the third protocol area is we're not only rarely introducing new algorithms. So what we mainly do is we take the stuff that we did here in the last 18 lecture weeks and try to build stuff with that. So it goes a little bit more towards application. We also look what are the other things we can do with these Primitiven in Deutsch. Okay, so these are often called, and this is kind of a newer terminology, people haven't been using it for 20 years, but maybe for, 5 or 10 years, they're called crypto primitives. So these are the basic building blocks, right? The Legos, Lego Bausteine, yeah. So these are the Lego bricks, and now we use Lego to build stuff, okay? So this is roughly what we do. And there are all kind of different things we do. And some things are cool, and sometimes it's really surprising. We even go back, and is it I think in 2 or 3 weeks, we go heavily back to symmetric algorithm and suddenly use DES and AES to build message authentication codes or hash function kind of interesting things. Okay? And people that are, that hate mathematics and hate crypto per se, it's hopefully getting more interesting. I mean, this is also a little bit more towards using cryptography in web browsers and cell phones, this kind of stuff. Okay, so, and today we start with, I think, one of the more exciting aspects of kind of a little bit higher level cryptography. Today we try to cover 4 topics, namely, want to give an introduction to digital signatures, very important topic, digital signatures. Another big area in which we only treat very briefly here are security services, whatever that is. Then we talk about RSA digital signatures. That means how to build digital signatures using RSA. And maybe, and I want to put that in brackets here, an attack against RSA digital signatures. So this is in brackets because I don't know whether we will have enough time today. Okay. So also what typically happens from now on, there will be less mathematics, there will be less formulas, there will be less funny elliptic curve graphs on the blackboard. Again, it's very often we use stuff that we did before and we put that in a larger context. We use that to build new schemes, new applications. It's kind of different notions. And actually today, particularly the first two chapters, are a lot of talking. Okay, so if you hate me talking, this is the wrong course for you for the next few weeks. Okay, so there's a lot more like understanding concepts as opposed to understanding mathematics or algorithms. Okay, let's jump to the first section of today. Introduction to digital signatures, digitale Signaturen. Okay, what is it? What do we try to do? And I always start from a pedagogical point of view. The goal, the objectives, the aim of this whole undertaking today is we want to have something like a signature like, a signaturähnliche, unterschriftähnliche, signature-like function for the electronic world. What I mean when I talk about signature like I mean actual, signature on a piece of paper, and I think this will be a pretty interesting discussion the next 20 minutes or so to look what happens when we sign in the real world and in the physical, in the paper world, and what happens if we try to do the same thing in the digital world. So let's first look at a conventional. What I mean with conventional is paper, okay? Signature. So you have 6 semesters, right, for finishing your bachelor's. You're 1.5 semesters through, so there's 4.5 semesters left. And after 4.5 semesters, you all get your bachelor diploma, right? Bachelor of Science in ITS with your name and your grades. Okay? You get that. So it's pretty tempting to Photoshop these things, right? And then you don't have to take the exams with me, and you understand the point, right? So it's pretty easy to come up with a faked one and you still get good jobs. So in order to prevent that, what we are doing as a society and as a department, we sign that, okay? So you get a signature from our department head, from unseren Dekan, right? He signs every bachelor diploma or master diploma or whatever, diploma engineer. People in the old program. What do we try to do? Well, we say, well, you can maybe come up with this document in Photoshop, but you can't really generate the signature here. This is the underlying assumption. And why do we do that? What is in more abstract terms is, the signature here is a proof of authenticity, Authentizität, das authentisch ist, Authenticity, of the sender. Sender being the issuer, somebody who issues that, who creates that, ausstellt, which is our department, right, or university. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do. If there's an original signature underneath, the assumption is it really comes from this person who, claims to have created that. Okay, so, and that works pretty nicely in the real world. You can buy a house for 1 million euros, essentially based on your signature. Which is kind of interesting because they're not really that hard to fake, right? You can recreate it. If I give you my signature and I leave you 1 hour and I give you a fake diploma, you could probably copy that. You got the idea? But it's kind of interesting. But still, we can buy cars and houses and sign all kind of contracts, with faking a signature, maybe, right? But of course, there's social barriers, right, and criminal barriers that make it pretty hard, legal barriers, but nevertheless. So, but again, it works nicely. It's very important in a modern world. You can enroll in a university with your signature. You can buy stuff and so forth. So now it's, of course, in the old days, we only had pieces of paper. That was the only type of signature we could issue. But now, for instance, if you do e-commerce, it might be very nice to, let's say, buy something on the internet in order to make sure you really bought it. You provide a signature. So what I'm trying to say, would be really nice to have a similar functionality for internet type of things, or in the digital world, or in the electronic world. Okay, so let's try the same. Let's try the same. Digitally. Okay, so now we don't have a paper document, we have an electronic document. We have a PDF file, right? A Word document or LaTeX or whatever. Okay. So now it doesn't say Bachelor of Science in IT Security now. It says 001101 blah, 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 blah. Okay. It's a PDF. If you open a PDF with a editor, this is what you see, right? You really see hex data typically, but it's zeros and ones. So this is your document. So what did we do here? We could probably say, okay, this is some kind of separation, and then we sign it at the bottom. Okay, and what do? We have some kind of unique biometric thing, right? We have a unique line with a pencil. So let's do the same, but instead of picking this graph, this Schriftzug, I pick a 0-1 combination, really long, 1,000 bits. So Christoph Paar, I pick I choose my own 1,000 bits, kind of similar the way I choose my unique signature and put that underneath a document. And now from now on, every time I want to send an email or a PDF document that is digitally signed, I put my unique 1,000 bits underneath. Okay? And why is that a really stupid idea? Why is that like the most stupid thing I've ever said in this lecture here? Why is this not working? You can copy that. Did you notice, like your grandparents, when they watched TV, they used videotapes and not DVDs? Do you know that? Not your grandparents, but me. Okay, so and videotapes were analog, right? This is analog, and one reason we switched to DVDs and CDs and stuff is they're really easy to copy, to make perfect copies. So this is really stupid, right? I put my signature underneath, I sent you an email with my signature. The first time I'm doing that, you get hold of my signature, you can make perfect copies, right? So this does not work that way, okay? What do we do? Well, and now, and this course, this 2-semester course, is not really about making funny, contract things, right? But it's about cryptography, so maybe we can use something with cryptography, and we can. You know this whole thing with Alice and Bob, and Alice wants to send stuff, and then she encrypts, and Bob can decrypt. And what makes this thing work is that they share the same key. That means, in particular on Bob's side, if Bob has the correct key, if Bob has a symmetric key, he's suddenly capable, able of doing certain things, for instance, to decrypt. So if you have a cryptographic key under certain circumstances, you're able to do things that other children cannot do, right? And let's try to do the same. That means we try to generate the signature here using a cryptographic algorithm, in particular with a key. And then the idea is, if you have the key, you can do the signature. I can maybe digitally sign stuff. If I have a cryptographic key, if you guys don't have the key, you cannot fake my signature anymore, okay? So how do we do that now? And that's, of course, a huge fundamental difference from the paper signature. We take our message, which let's call that X, the document, like plain text X. We plug X into a signature algorithm, cryptographic function, and we use a key here at this point, okay? And then the output we call Y, okay? Good. So that's kind of, we're not there yet, but this is halbe Miete, okay, halfway towards digital signature algorithm. Okay, let's say let's assume we do that. We would get a protocol, maybe. This is not a protocol. This is just generating a signature. Okay. So let's assume this is a space, the universe of all possible messages. This is which is actually called sometimes the message space. And this is this one specific document. This is this diploma I want to, Bachelorurkunde, this bachelor diploma I want to sign. So what I do from here, I have the signature space. Just and what I do, I use this signature function, whatever that is. We don't know yet how that really works, and I compute one Y point, one signature. Okay. So what you see now is exactly the same as you see on the upper blackboard, just with different schematics or so. But now this is only what happens on Alice's side, on Bob's side, if you wish, on Bob's side maybe. Now, if we want to send that, what you have to do you have to take both X and Y, that means the document and the signature. And he sends it over the channel. Okay? And now it's getting interesting. I mean, this so far, there is somewhat of an analogy to the physical world. We have a document, we have a message, and we have a signature. What happens in the physical world, at least in Germany mostly, is if you're an employee and somebody applies and shows you, his or her diploma, you look at it and you see the signature from the Ruhr University on it, from our department head or the rector of the university. And what essentially happens is they believe that this is correct. Okay? They don't really check, they don't really verify. Okay? This doesn't work here, right? You can't take the document, look at Y and say, oh, that's probably correct. Nobody would fake that, right? It wouldn't work. Which is actually interesting. A friend of mine who studied with me is married to a woman from Spain, and that's different. They had at some point they needed some Anerkennung of her diploma, and they went or some translation, and they went to City Hall, zum nicht Standesamt, Einwohnermeldeamt. Okay, and so they needed, I think, like a translation or something that this is an original diploma. So what they did, they had the signatures of the current university president, of the rector. They had in City Hall, im Einwohnermeldeamt, but this was an older diploma, so that wasn't current anymore, that wasn't actual. So they wouldn't give her the stamps. They wouldn't say this is like an original diploma. So what they actually did, they had a list with the original signatures, and then they actually compared, how does the signature on the diploma look. So you can do that, but mostly in at least in Germany, people don't check that. Okay, so but again, we have to do that definitely in the digital world. So what we need here, we need a fancy word for saying we have to check, we have to verify. That's a fancy term of saying the same. So what we need here is a verification function, which is called ver, V-E-R, which again needs as input both the message and the signature that belongs to the message together with a cryptographic key. And now there's the first question, which is, I don't know, maybe a simple question. What is a possible outcome of such a check, of a verification? What can happen? What can the verification function tell us? How many bits of information do we get out? 1 bit. It's go or no go. It means either this is a valid, a true signature, or this is an invalid signature. There's only 1 bit of information. Why am I stressing that? Later on, we end up using RSA for this stuff. So you might again do arithmetic with 2,000 bits and stuff, very big calculation and square and multiply, blah, blah, blah. But the end statement is only go or no go. Unlike encryption, typically we encrypted the whole message, and the ciphertext, of course, is 2048 bits, for instance, in the RSA case. Here, we only want to have 1 bit of information. Okay, so formally we can put it this way. So this is true, comma, if Y is valid signature, or it has a value false if Y is invalide Signatur. Okay. Okay, so let's stop with this. Okay, and we later on, this is not the whole truth. Okay, as often I'm cheating. Okay, so that we have to add some very important little detail, but we do that in 10 minutes. Okay, so now, but we're 90% correct, or 70%, or I don't know. We're almost there, but there's some detail missing. What I want to do now, let's say we do it this way. Okay, and then we're almost done with first chapter, this introduction to digital signatures. We want to step back and discuss in more abstract terms. Let's say we build such a system. What do we achieve? What did we want to do? What can we do now? Kind of what are the more abstract functions that we achieve? So this is, I call number 2. That's chapter number 2. So, we're almost done. Again, we're going to come back to this chapter, but first let's start with the second chapter because it makes sense at this moment in time. We talk about microphone cable. So what we did so far in this whole course, you saw my diagram before. We talked a lot about algorithms. We have like 10 or so crypto algorithms introduced in the last, 18 weeks or so. What we rarely did is we didn't really talk about what we can do with them. Oh, let's see. Nee, ne, genau. Wackelt immer noch, oder? Kann ich aufs andere Mikrofon gehen, oder ist das okay? Okay, so we switch microphones. Okay. We should be online again. Very good. So, what I was saying is, I want to turn the volume down a little bit. So, when we did the algorithms, you kind of believed you were doing something meaningful, something that makes sense, but I was a little bit cheating here. I didn't tell you very much what we can use them for. Actually, my main motivation was only one very, very simple thing, probably the most simple thing you can do with cryptography, namely doing actual encryption. Okay? But in reality, there are many, many other things you can do besides encryption, and this is that's the discussion we start to do now. Okay, so, and these are called security services. So, the definition here is the objectives, the Ziele in German, right? The Ziele, the objectives of a security system are called, in quotation marks, security services. Okay. And now I want to talk a little bit, and there are many. There's like, I don't know, you can come up with a dozen or so security services. In practice, they're not all equally important. And what I want to introduce to you now is the four most important ones, the most crucial ones, the ones that are most often used. Okay. So the first one I already mentioned before is, now comes a list of 4 important security services. Where do I put that down? Okay, let's start here. Okay, The first one, and this is the main security service we talked about, I've never called that security service, but now I start calling that security service, which is keeping stuff secret, preventing people from reading that, okay? And this is called confidentiality. Okay. What is the definition of that? Information is kept secret from all but the authorized parties. This is very fancy terminology for, this is this picture here. We do encryption, unsecured channel, we do decryption, okay? This is, I think I did that in the first lecture back in October, okay? So, and this is the main motivation, it was the main motivation I've been using for 1.5 semester, to keep you awake, is saying, this is what we're trying to do. We send something over an unsecured channel, there's Oscar tries to eavesdrop, so we try to keep things confidential. So what do? We use mainly symmetric encryption. We can also use public key encryption, asymmetric encryption, right? We know how to do that. So now let's look at this protocol here. Does this protocol, whatever we're doing here, this is a channel here, right? This is, Alice and Bob. Does this provide confidentiality, yes or no? No. Why not? It's absolutely right. This is X, this is a message in clear text, so no confidentiality. Is that a problem? No, because I never said I want to keep things confidential. What I want to do is, for this example, it's the opposite. You don't want to keep your grades secret here, right? People should be able to read that. What we want try to do is we wanted to have a proof of sender, right? So it's not a problem. We don't have confidentiality, but we don't really want that here. And again, very often we needed that. And so this is kind of almost a trivial statement, right? The next, where do we then? 4, it's 1 out of 4. So the remaining 3, they're getting more interesting, and actually they're getting more complex. So please be awake. This is kind of the most important, the next 10 minutes are the most important part of today. So no confidentiality. What else can we do? Number 2, is message authentication. What do we mean by that? We mean that the sender of a message is authentic. Okay? Be awake for the discussion that now follows. Do we have that here? That means this is Bob. Bob receives X and Y. Bob verifies, and he gets the statement, yeah, this is a valid signature. So we, in this case, do we have message authentication? Does Bob know this message is really coming from Alice?
No.
Why not?
Because anyone else could have sent it?
No. No. No, we do have, this is incorrect, this is wrong. Why do we have message authentication here? Who can generate X and Y? What do we need to know to generate X and Y? The key. So that's the underlying assumption. Alice and Bob, run a key establishment protocol, Diffie-Hellman or whatever. Once we've done that, and let's assume only Alice has the key here, only Alice is able to do this digital signing. So yes, this is given. Which is, by the way, pretty much what my signature does under your diploma here, right? It's really coming from Ruhr University, right? Here it's really coming from Alice because only Alice has the key, okay? So this works. So the main objective, the main goal is achieved. We're done for today. We're not, okay? But it's, when we started out, what was this goal? You see that goal, signature-like function for the electronic world we have. This is a signature-like function for the electronic world. But we have much more, and this is now the discussion that follows. Now it's getting more and more interesting. What we also get en passant, im Vorbeigehen, is message integrity. And I put message in parentheses, in Klammern, because it's often just called integrity. Meaning, message has not been modified during transmission. Now it's getting interesting here. So what happens here? It's Alice signs the signature. And now somebody starts to alter this. Let's say it's an electronic contract or a Banküberweisung, electronic fund transfer. And you flip around the bits, which can be pretty bad, right? You add a zero. Instead of transferring 100 euros, you're transferring 1,000 euros, for instance. That means X gets replaced by X tilde here. Okay, this is what Oscar does. Okay. That means now the receiver, Bob, has this verification algorithm, crypto algorithm, and instead of X, he uses X tilde. Without knowing how that works in detail, what will happen here? Any idea? Yeah. Will be false. Why? Because this Y, together with this key, belongs to this X and not to the X tilde. And you know that what we end up doing, we're doing essentially in RSA encryption later on. Even if you flip one bit in RSA and then you do an encryption exponentiation, this spreads over the entire word immediately. So this probably fails. So yes, we do have integrity. And now, maybe briefly, let's compare that to where we started from. Somewhere there's your overall grade, your Gesamtnote. Können wir leise sein? This is important. And this is not difficult, but it's important. Okay? It's not as difficult as elliptic curves, but it's important. Somewhere there's probably your overall grade, your Gesamtnote, right? And let's say you have a 68%, which is not good, right? We don't want to have a 68. This is not good here, okay? So, and you really want to have the job, right? And and there's the signatures already underneath. And the 6 and the 8, they don't look that different, right? So, you could maybe sit down and turn that into an 88, right? Does this signature protect against this? No. Okay. So, what I'm trying to say here is the traditional analog piece of paper signature does not provide any type of data integrity. This does. Okay? So even we try to do something differently, we only try to generate sender authenticity, message authentication here at this point. We get for free, so to speak, we got message integrity, which is not bad. Okay? So now comes the most important 5 minutes of this lecture. Namely the fourth service, which is also the least intuitive one, also der am wenigsten naheliegende. So I need somewhat of a discussion just to explain what we're trying to do here. Okay. So this is not bad, So it means we have message authentication, we have message integrity. Now one big application for this stuff is electronic commerce. Electronic commerce meaning buying stuff on the internet. Okay. So do you know what happens if you buy something a book? You buy my book. You want to give it to your girlfriend for Christmas, right? So you buy this book, Amazon, 34 euros or something, okay? So you buy the book, you order the book, on December 20th probably, right? Or December 22nd, this is when I buy my Christmas presents. Your girlfriend splits up with you, okay? Or your boyfriend splits up with you, okay? So now you have the book, and you already have this one book, right? So what do you want to do? And you hate crypto anyway, so what do you do with two books? You would like to have the money back, so do you know what happens with Amazon if you don't want to have the book? You mail it back and you get the money back, okay? So they're very, very friendly, okay? So, but now I want to talk about a different scenario where people don't want to give you your money back, for instance, if you buy Volkswagen, okay? So when you start buying something really expensive, such like as a car, on the internet, let's see what happens then, okay? So this is Alice, and this is Volkswagen, so this is your car dealer, okay? What you can do with most cars nowadays, with most car website, you have a BMW called it the car configurator a while ago. It means you can go there, you can exactly look at your Golf, blah, 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 blah model, and, add the right engine and the right inside color and the right navigation system and, everything you want to have or don't want to have. You can configure your car, okay? Let's say we do that here, and let's say you have a really bad taste, okay? For instance, in the book I talk about, I think you order a pink car, which is already pretty weird, with an orange seats or something, right? Like really ugly, okay? Everybody with me? Really bad taste, okay? So you order that and it's 20,000 euros, that thing, okay? You digitally sign that with this algorithm, Volkswagen and you have the same, somehow you run a Diffie-Hellman, so you agree on the same key here. You order that, Volkswagen can check, okay, this is an original order. It really comes from, Christoph Parr or whatever, because it's digitally signed. And then they start manufacturing the car. And whatever, 3 weeks later, the car gets delivered, okay? You're back with your girlfriend again, right? So she sees the car and she said, are you crazy, right? I'm going to split up with you, right? I'm separating. Ich mach Schluss wieder, okay? This car is too ugly. You want to keep your girlfriend. So what do you do? You want to do the same trick you did with Amazon, okay? That means, where am I here? Oh, so you send the car back. You said, I don't want to have it. This is what happens with the book before. You said, I don't want to have the book. And Amazon has the policy, no question asked. They actually give you the money back. I think you have to pay for the postage. Volkswagen won't. They're not dumb, right? I mean, they see the car and say, wow, this is ugly. We're never going to sell that car again, right? I mean, they just lost whatever 10 or 15,000 euros manufacturing the car that they can never sell again. So what they're going to do, they have to sue you for klagen, okay, to sue. They have to sue you in the court of law, and they say here, Professor Parr ordered that car, and he doesn't want to pay. And now we're getting a really interesting discussion here, okay? So myself or my lawyer, there are two things we can say. We can say, the first thing that we say, well, we never ordered that. And then Volkswagen says, oh no, they did order that because this is the order. This is a web form, right, with the car configurator, all the data. And this is this valid signature. And, only Christoph Parr has this key here. Okay? So he must have shown that. So, and what is my argument at this moment here? What am I doing to say so that I don't have to pay 20,000 euros for a really ugly car? And I'm losing my girlfriend. So what I don't want to have the car, I want to keep my girlfriend. So what do I do? Which is a legal argument hier? Was ist das juristische Argument? Ja, oben. Können Sie in Deutsch machen? Who can fake the signature? Volkswagen, there's one other party on planet Earth, there's one other person, one other entity who can come up with a valid signature, which is Volkswagen. And I have a good lawyer said, well, first, Volkswagen can do it, and in fact, they have a pretty big incentive, right? Hohen Anreiz to do, because they can sell more cars, right? So, what's happening here is the judge, der Richter, he can't decide, right? Because the reality is, of course, I could have generated the signature, but Volkswagen could have done too, okay? So, we have this dispute, and there's no way for, in cryptography that's called a neutral third party, neutrale dritte Partei, like a judge cannot decide who has done that, right? Okay, and this is a very important security service. This is called non-repudiation. Repudiation. I write the German terms down. This is either Nicht-Zurückweisbarkeit. I love those German words, right? I only have a blackboard long. Nicht-Zurückweisbarkeit oder Beweisbarkeit, which is simpler. Provability, okay? So, and what is that? The sender of a message cannot deny, kann nicht bestreiten, cannot deny the creation of the message. Okay. Towards a neutral third party. This is, strictly speaking, this is sender non-repudiation. We also have receiver non-repudiation, where let's say Alice wants to prove that somebody actually received the message, which can be very important too. Let's say by if you have whatever you have, or you have a certain deadline where you have to hand in a document. For instance, here, if Markus Dürmuth is really strict with you and he really wants to prove that you sent the email by 8:30 this morning with your homework assignment. So that would be a situation where you want to have receiver non-repudiation. But right now we just call that non-repudiation for sender non-repudiation. The question is, do we have non-repudiation? No. If Alice claims, I've never sent that, we cannot prove that because the receiver could have done that. The receiver has K, that means the receiver, Volkswagen in the example before, can generate a signature, a valid signature here. Okay? What do we do? Short answer is nothing, as long as we stay with symmetric cryptography. This is an inherent property of symmetric cryptography, of symmetric algorithm. Well, why are symmetric algorithms symmetric cryptography? Why is that called symmetric? Where's the symmetry here in the setup? What is symmetric here? Same key. When we talk about symmetric cryptography, we mean symmetric keys. That means Alice and Bob have the same key. That means they can do the same stuff. Okay, that means Alice can sign, Bob can sign, Bob can verify, Ellie can verify. Okay, this is inherent here that both parties have the same capabilities. Non-repudiation, this is an abstract look on things. Confidentiality, message authentication, and message integrity. Who was the attacker in this scenario? When we talked about message integrity, for instance, we talked about somebody flipping bits here. We talked about Oscar. Okay? So 1, 2, and 3 are security services that are needed if the bad guy is Oscar, if this is a third person. Okay? Let's go back to this Volkswagen example. Who's the bad person in the Volkswagen example? Alice, right? It's not Oscar. This is one of the things that happens in the brave new world of internet. We want to communicate securely with people. You know, Volkswagen wants to communicate with its customer base, with its customers. At the same time, the customer may want to cheat Volkswagen, right? So now we have a situation with a legitimate communication partner. Alice is not faking something. Alice is not saying I'm Oscar. It's not that Oscar is saying I'm Alice. Alice is Alice. Alice wants to communicate, but maybe later on she wants to cheat. Okay? So the dishonest party, der unehrliche Teilnehmer, is now either Alice or Bob. And in these situations, when Alice and Bob cheat, symmetric cryptography is of no help. Why? Because they have the same key. Okay, they can, what Bob can do, Alice can do, and vice versa. Okay, so what do we need to do at this point? We have to switch algorithm families, right? We have to go. We have to switch to asymmetric cryptography, and there's, for instance, the Handbook of Applied Cryptography, which was kind of my Bible for many years. They say at some points, they say this non-repudiation, what we just discussed the last 10 minutes, is the main reason why we need asymmetric cryptography. There's a little bit simplification. There are other things where public key is good at, you know, key exchange, for instance. But nevertheless, this is one huge reason why we want to have public key cryptography. So what do we do now? We modify the protocol with colors. So we go back here. So what do we do? What we have to do, before the problem was that, you know, if you send the car order to Volkswagen, later on it turned out Volkswagen can also generate this car order, right? And the judge says, you know, I can't decide. So what we have to do now is we have to provide, you know, one of these keys becomes a private key. So either here we use a public key or a private key, and here we use the other key. Okay? That's the basic idea. We use public key cryptography. And now the big question, if you give the right answer, it was perfectly fine that you spent 60 minutes here this morning. Where do we use the private key? It's the verification or the signature part? Who is in favor of signature? Raise your hand. Who is signature? Okay, you're right. So, meaning it's a private key, which is private to Alice. That means only Alice knows the key. That means only Alice is capable of signing. This is exactly what we want to have. Okay? So which key does Bob get? Which key is used by Volkswagen is the, surprise, surprise, the public key here. Okay? Which is also good because we want to make the public key is easy to distribute, right? It's on my public key is literally on my website. If you go to the website of my research group, you click on, you know, people, you click on Christoph Parr, you'll see my public PGP key. Okay, so this is easy to distribute. And this is great because we want to make it easy for people to verify, right? If you get I can send you an email, you know, through Blackboard. I can send you an email if I want to, digitally signed. You can verify that, and you need my verification key. Well, you get that from my website here. Okay, so this is a good setup. You know that this is a public key. It's this. The first great thing is I use a private key here. Only me, I can assign messages. And then the publication is easy because everyone can verify by just downloading my key from the website. Okay, this is very simplistic, and I didn't address a lot of nasty attack kind of things, but this is the basic idea. Okay, so maybe let's step back for one more minute. Let's go back to the Volkswagen example. Now it works nicely. Again, you still have a really bad taste. You configure this car, orange, pink, blah, blah, blah. You sign it with your private key. It's being sent over. Volkswagen manufactures the Golf. Golf gets sent. You again say, I don't want to have that. And what you really say, I never ordered that. Again, Volkswagen drags you to the court, and schleppen sie zum Gericht. And now it's really easy. Now your Volkswagen says, oh, Professor Parr must have generated that because this is a car order, this is a digital signature. I can verify this. This is Christoph Parr's public key here at this point. And now I'm stuck. I cannot say, oh, no, I didn't do it. Volkswagen signed it. Say, no, because this is my private key. Only I have my private key, which is maybe, buried in my Geldkarte or a neue Personalausweis, right? It's a new German ID card. You can do this kind of things with the neue Personalausweis here. So you can provide this. And nobody else can, including the receiver of the message. This is kind of the cool thing. The receiver can verify, can say, yes, this is a valid message, valid signature, or an invalid one, valid. But the receiver cannot generate signatures by himself. So this is a cool setup. You can go back to sleep. That's the important thing for today. So now we can actually come up with a basic protocol with digital signatures. So Alice generates a key pair. Okay, private Alice. Okay, public Alice. Without a comma for now. Okay. Now Alice signs something, so she computes signature of the message X using, of course, her private key Alice, which yields Y. Actually, I called that in the book, and let's call that S from now on, okay, not Y. She sends over X, S. And now Bob has to verify using the public key of Alice. And the input is, of course, the message and the accompanying signature. And he gets a true-false statement out of it, right? Either it's valid or invalid. Okay, so, and this is, and by the way, what you saw before with the symmetric setup, okay, where this was K and this was K, so not private key and public key, but just symmetric keys, what you saw here is this also has a name, and actually we're doing that in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. The same picture, without public and without These are called message authentication codes, or MACs. Okay. And again, we're going to come back. This is very, very useful. It's part of your web browsers. Web browsers heavily use MACs if you do a secure connection. But this is a different story, so we're going to talk about that later. So now we're done with the second chapter. And we're done. Okay. So now the very nice thing about this topic is, in order to build, what typically happens in the past, I gave some motivation to do a crypto system, and then we did 2 weeks elliptic curves, right? It was really hard to do the crypto system. This is not true anymore because we did all the crypto system. You'll see now, for instance, doing RSA digital signature is super easy now, which is kind of surprising. So all this blah, 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 Volkswagen car order, this was kind of hard and longish. But now actually doing the math, doing the crypto is pretty easy from now on. Okay? It will not always be the case, but often. Okay? So now we want to look at a way of realizing that. The big question, obviously, here, the big question is, what is this function and what is the verification function? It turns out in the RSA case, it's very easy. There are all kind of different signatures out, but RSA is a good example. So that will be chapter number 3, RSA digital signature. So first we have the setup phase. What is setup phase in public key cryptography? This is mainly computing the key pair, public key and private key. The setups, we compute K private Alice, which is this parameter D. This is this whole thing with Euler's phi function and two random primes, blah 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 blah. We're not doing that again. You did that in the, for your first exam. Then Alice computes her public key, which is the modulus n and the public exponent e. Okay. And now comes the RSA digital signature protocol. And I kind of do that in a similar way. We've done that above with the same. So what Bob does here is, he has what Alice does. Alice has these two parameters here. She sends the public key over, that meaning the parameters n and e. Now Alice computes the signature. Means she computes S, which is the signature using the private key. Of the message X. And now it's interesting. How do we do that? Okay. The interesting thing is you do almost the identical thing, or you do the same thing that you do with RSA in the RSA crypto system. We're not doing encryption here, but you're still doing the same thing. You take X and you raise that to the eth power. modulo n. Okay, exactly the same thing we did before. Okay. Sorry, to the d's power. Does anyone know why I wrote e there, or why I made this mistake? What do you do with RSA encryption? What do you take x to the e, right? For encryption, you take the public exponent. You remember this analogy, the Analogie with the mailbox, right? Everybody can encrypt, use the public key for encryption. And that's the public key. Yeah? That's what you do with RSA encryption. In RSA digital signature, you want to have the secret here in the exponent, right? You want to have the secret exponent. Why is that? That was the discussion before. For generating signatures, you need the private, you need the secret. Okay? This is what we're doing here. Now what you send over this is very important, is X together with the signature. Don't send just the signature over. Just the signature doesn't mean anything. It's just a random 2048 bits. Now what Bob has to do, Bob has to verify. That's the other big unknown, how do we verify? And this is kind of awkward to write because this is not equal to something. This is just the process. What Bob computes, he computes S to the E, right? You take S, the signature, raises this to the eth power. E is the public exponent, so Bob uses the public key at this point, and let's call this result x prime, x strich mod n here. Okay? And this is just a computation, so what you get out of here is 2000 bits. But this, what you really want to have is this go, no-go statement, true, false, right? How do we do that? Does anyone know here? What is the thing that Bob has to do? How does he... Right now he just computed 2048 bits, but how does he get the statements this is valid or invalid? Any ideas? Not XOR. He simply has to check this x prime that's computed, is this the same x as here? Okay, so he has to check is x identical to, actually we can do that this way, okay, is this equal to x or not equal? If this is the case, then we have a valid signature, and if this is the case, we have an invalid signature. Okay. Here comes the proof of correctness. Let's say whether this is actually correct. What happens here is what does Bob compute? Bob computes S to the E, but where's S coming from? S is coming from here. S was computed as x raised to the secret exponent. So this is x to the d to the e. And of course all of that is modulo n, so this is x to the dE. And does anyone remember from RSA this is equal to what? What is the result of this here? as x. There was a proof, Euler's phi function in the exponent, blah, blah, blah. That means first raising x to the d's power, and then later on raising that to the e's power, we effectively compute x to the d to the e, and if everything works out, you get x out again. Okay? This is the same that was inherent in RSA encryption. This can be shown to be true. Maybe let's step back and let's see what happens here when, let's say, with respect to the security services. For instance, what about integrity? What happens if we do have a bad guy on the channel, if there is actually, in fact, Oscar and flips bits, electronic bank transfer, and he flips the MSB bit, right? It's the most significant bit, really bad, right? With really bad consequences. What would happen here? What would happen here is, Bob would do the comparison relatively to x prime, and that wouldn't work out because what Bob computes here is x prime is actually equal to the original x here. But now you don't have x anymore. You have x prime with the flip bit. That means you would be in this case here, right? It says these are not equal. So you have integrity. You have, of course, you have sender authenticity. If this actually checks out, if in this case here, Bob knows this is coming from Alice. Why is that? Because only Alice has the private key, the correct private key here at this point. And the third thing we discussed is non-repudiation. Yes, we do have non-repudiation because if there's a dispute, a fight in court, if there's a dispute, Alice can prove, Bob can show, Alice must have generated the signature here. Okay, so the last thing for today, actually, we're not doing number 4. The last thing we're doing is, very briefly, it's a very practical thing, computational aspect. First, signing. So this is what Alice does. What is the computation Alice has to do when she signs? Well, this is a signature scheme. She has to compute x to the e. What kind of algorithm do we use at this point here? Very good. Square and multiply algorithm. Which is no fun, right? I've written costly, meaning rule of thumb, Daumenregel, factor 1,000 slower than AES. Okay? Doing one AES encryption, this, let's say, takes 1 millisecond. This takes 1 second. Okay? It's very rough rule of thumb. Public key is a factor 1,000 slower, sometimes a factor 100. It's really slow. It's no fun. So now it's different for the verification. Maybe I should write that down. So what we do here is x to the d mod n. What we do here, we do x to the e mod n. And it looks completely identical that you do an exponentiation here at this point, right? And normally, of course, you use the square and multiply. But, and I'm not sure whether I discussed that, there's one trick that you can play. Did I talk about that when I did RSA?
S to the E?
Yeah. Danke. S to the E. What you can do, you have to do an exponentiation. There is no shortcut to an exponentiation, but you can use special e's. And that's what people do in practice. often E, if you have 2048 bits, you're not choosing E as a 2048-bit number, but as a 2-bit number. For instance, with the value 3. 3 is really short, right? Or, which is another popular value, is 2 to the 16 plus 1. Does anyone know how many bits you need for this number here? Any ideas? No ideas? 17 bits, okay? It means rather than doing a square multiply with 2,000 bits, scanning each bit starting, on the MSB bit, you only have to scan 17 bits. What is the consequence? And this is super practical. It's implemented in many, many web browsers and in all kind of devices and applications. That means verification is super fast. Suddenly we get in the range of AES, of symmetric cryptography. It means digital signature verification is very fast. This is rather slow. So it's kind of an odd thing, which you don't have, for instance, with elliptic curves. What you have with elliptic curves, they're both roughly equal speed. Here you're faster. You may be a factor of 10 faster with signature generation, but then with verification, you may be a factor 10 or so slower. Okay? So this is specific to RSA. Whether that's helpful, I don't know. We're done with the lecture. Frau Anja Nuss is going to make a brief statement. Stay with me. Don't run out, okay? So I'm done with the lecture. You can, yeah, very good.